Let me just start off with the most commonly asked question. There are 7 people who've asked this question so far. How do I get me a single stop? So they've phrased it in different ways. So how much does a single stop cost, and how does one get one of those or something like it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step in really looking at single stop as a solution for your campus is to schedule a conversation. And I'm right here in North Carolina. I live in Raleigh. So I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody in this room, or we can do a joint thing where we talk about what single stop is, what it does, how you bring it to your campus. The cost to bring single stop ranges. We do have great mass in North Carolina and some conversations about what it looks like to take single stop across the state system-wide, which helps reduce costs. But the ongoing cost for single stop after those initial years, depending on if there's a system-wide effort or not, ranges from $6,000 to $15,000 for that ongoing cost of single stop. And that's the licensing fee, that's the technology, that's the ongoing support to have single stop on your campus.
There was a separate question that related, and essentially Laura's the example of that. Can a single stop come to a non-community college campus? And obviously it can.
Yes. Yeah.
So here's, that was kind of the easy question. Now we get back into the harder ones. Why, as we shift our focus to the 25 to 54-year-old age group, has no one mentioned the student loan debt this morning? 1.3 trillion outstanding across 44 million borrowers with 7 million individuals in default. It's the dirty secret of a generation. Dirty enough that no one wants to talk about that, even among friends. It is the elephant in the room. And I would argue that there are both elephants and donkeys in this room, and that's a good thing. But it is an important thing, and it's been kind of implicit in this conversation, and everyone wants to answer this question. Andrew, why don't you start? Sure. You had your hand out. Maybe you were pointing at somebody.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Well, and I forgot to thank Leslie, first of all, for inviting me to participate today. Thank you, Leslie, for having me. You're one of the first people I met at the system office, and we missed you dearly, but I'm glad you're doing this really important work. So sincerely, thank you for having me. What I would say about the student debt conversation, not only do I avoid it, but I think it's one we need to take on head on. And the biggest issue that I see from my perspective and from our system is it's not just the amount of debt you take on, and that's not even the primary concern. The primary concern should be, do you complete a credential that allows you to repay what you've taken on, right? And so, and when you look at, say, outcomes by level of debt, right, it always shocks people to learn that defaults on federal loans are the highest at the lowest levels of debt, right? Students are taking on a small amount of debt, they're dropping out, they're never returning, they have no credential to show for it. They're unable to pay back even that small amount of loan debt. So completion has to be kind of at the center of these conversations about debt, not just the upfront price of admission. It has to be about completion and completion of a credential, to Peter's point, that is relevant and that allows you to earn a family-sustaining wage and pay your loan back. So I think we ignore it at our peril, especially for this group of students in particular that often need to borrow more because of the other commitments they have, like family and other things.
Right.
Andrew answered that quite well. I will point out, of course, you can save about half the cost of a 4-year degree by starting at a community college and transferring those credits to the UNC system or our private and independent colleges because of the collaborative relationships we have there.
And there's some really good collaborative relationships between community colleges and independent colleges and universities, and also the UNC system, including one at NC State that we're really excited about.
I'm wearing my Wolfpack red suit. Please give me credit with the chancellor for that, all right, and Governor Hunt.
also about education, and I did not intentionally leave that out. We all have time that we had to pay attention to, but it's about educating students. At a private HBCU, and I deal with this every day, and again, I'm not your traditional dean, I'm an unconventional dean. I try to get to the grassroots of what's going on. And when students decide to return, many will say, well, I have a lot of debt already. Okay, we have this debt, but we have to think about it too. There's systems out here that are causing us to have debt. I'm sitting here in front of you right now as a middle-class individual who has a lot of debt from getting her degrees, but my return on investment is me having my doctorate now, me being able to afford to pay back my college loans. We have a lot of individuals who are out here, as Andrew has stated, they started school before. They may not have been ready, and they have this debt and nothing to show for. So when we bring these students back to the university, we have to be working with them strategically to help them find those additional resources that can help offset costs. But one of the main things is educating them about loans. A lot of times universities or even some staff members will think, oh, these students are just taking out extra money. They shouldn't be doing that. But we don't know individuals' stories as to why they're taking out that extra $100 because they may need to pay for daycare. So again, these systems that we have in place, we have to work together as the community colleges already are to eliminate some of this debt by doing some tuition reduction or offsetting cost period for persons returning to school.
There are a lot of people who just don't know where the money is, and having somebody who understands how to spell FAFSA and what that means. I've just spent 2 years of my life learning how to spell FAFSA. Is really important. Somebody who's gone through that system, because it's not set up to be user-friendly for people that are coming back.
The only thing I might add to that is just the one thing that I would say we're focusing a lot on in our system is one of the main culprits of high student loan debt, especially among completers, right, is extended time to degree, right? So tuition in North Carolina is low enough that tuition and fees is about half of what the cost of attendance is. Right, and it's probably even less here, depending on which institution you look at. Where you get slammed is you got to pay living expenses. You got to pay to live, room. You got to pay to eat. You got to pay for transportation. So the longer you stick around, you're getting hit by that living expense bill year 5, year 6, right, year 7 and 8 in some cases. So how do we get people out more quickly and on that on time or just over on time frame to keep that debt low? That's a huge lever that I think is underappreciated.
Here's a related question, I think specifically for Peter. Are community colleges exploring advocating for state funds to support basic needs, aside from the Finish Line grant, that might provide free transportation, childcare, food pantries, transitional housing for students?
Yeah, as I mentioned, of course, we're exploring that system-wide partnership with Single Stop and others who can help connect our students to those resources. The Finish Line grants, I'm sure Governor Cooper will talk about it at lunch. They've been very successful. The legislature provided emergency financial assistance for our students who were recovering from Hurricane Florence, incredibly critical for them to remain enrolled and on track to complete their studies. And I think, Leslie, at the heart of that question, really the whole conversation here this late this morning has been about the practical, the economic, and really the moral case for why we need to support our students in these cases, because the labor market disruptions that are coming will be tremendous. We've seen great change throughout the course of our lifetimes, but even more will follow with increased automation, artificial intelligence. It will affect our lives and education and the workforce in ways that probably we can't even conceive of yet. And that's why my thesis is, and why community colleges are so important at this point in time, is that education in the future is likely to be shorter in duration and more regularly occurring throughout people's lives, essentially lifelong learning. And if this state is ever going to realize its full potential, there has to be opportunity for all. If we're going to close the rural-urban divide, the achievement gaps, the skills gap, we've got to focus on the opportunity gap that exists here and elsewhere. for North Carolina to resume its place as a leader in education throughout this country and throughout this world. That's our path forward.
Two questions about justice-involved individuals. The first one is, do we have resources to work with them, and is that an intentional focus of Single Stop? And the second one has to do with the fact that we are many times giving people the opportunity to earn degrees while in prison, but we don't necessarily have programs in place to help them once they get out to find jobs. So I wonder if that's a focus of Single Stop, or whether Johnson C. Smith has any experience in that regard.
So I'm happy to kick off that answer. So Single Stop does believe in this idea of wraparound services. In addition to the benefits and resources that we work to connect students to, we also work to bring in additional wraparound services such as free tax and free legal services. The challenge in North Carolina with legal services is that unlike in other states, there's not a huge pro bono requirement in North Carolina. So it's hard to get those services on campuses in the ways that we've been able to do in other states. And so there could be some things looked at from a policy level to encourage attorneys to offer services to students in ways that are more comprehensive. So we have tried a lot, and we have partners in the room that have been with us, and it is just very challenging. We also have a shortage of attorneys in our more rural areas, which makes it even more challenging to get students that help that they need. We are, however, we're always updating our technology and offering additional resources. So I will say this, as new resources come available for students who may be justice involved, where they qualify for expungements or other services, we will be incorporating that into the technology so they can see if that's something that they can take advantage of.
And I would hope that not just Johnson C. Smith University can speak to reentry opportunities and employment. I'm hoping that all institutions can do so. However, at Johnson C. Smith University, we are intentional about being available and accessible for all students. We all need second chances. We all need third chances. And just because someone has been involved with the justice system before should not prevent he or she from accomplishing other goals. We're very strategic in what we do. We take a student as an individual. We don't look at the past. We look at the future and what this student can become. We have a number of students who have matriculated through Johnson C. Smith and particularly through Metropolitan College Professional Studies that are now working in our community, serving as social workers. They're working in the business sector. So we contribute that to the partnerships that we have through the Belk Endowment, the Duke Endowment, our board of directors for the university, all of our support services, including Single Stop, who are invested in Johnson C. Smith University, that we are producing some of the best leaders, and we are taking students as they are, leading them forward and helping them matriculate and helping them to not only improve academically and professionally, but personally too, so that they can feel that someone is invested in them and they will go on. They're our return on investment. They're our walking billboards of what we are actually doing at Johnson C. Smith University.
Finally, a question about undocumented and non-citizen immigrants and the role that they could play in helping us achieve our attainment goals.
I can speak to this too, but if you want to go ahead.
Look, I'll say, I think we all come from an education background. We're educators. We want to help all North Carolinians be educated. And hopefully a consensus will build in this area over time. Because I think there is, again, a strong political, economic, and moral case to be made.
I am actually a product of predominantly white institutions. My heart is invested in a historically black college here in Charlotte. A lot of people wonder about the relevance of HBCUs, and we've been doing this type of work since our inception. There were times when African Americans, as we know, could not attend predominantly white institutions or white institutions. So we created environments that allowed us to be ourselves and to grow and learn. We have always been open to all backgrounds, and so we have to dispel that myth too. Johnson C. Smith University has also been intentional with undocumented as well as persons of other races that may not be as accepted at some institutions. And we're intentional about that because any individual can learn, and that's part of the reason that we created Caminos Hacia el Éxito in our, even in the online program. We were strategic with this because of the Chetty study. We know there are parents in the community who cannot communicate with the teachers. And so we said in order to break these socioeconomic barriers, we need to create a way for parents to be able to just communicate some of the basic things with educators and not necessarily having a translator always around, so that teachers know that they're involved, but parents can feel a part too. So we've created a certificate where persons can come and improve their English communication skills. From that, we have people now enrolling in our degree program. So again, if you just meet people where they are and let them know that there's an opportunity, they will take advantage, but you have to be intentional, and it can't just be run-of-the-mill.
All right, thank you to everybody for being with us. Please give them a round of applause.